Dear Mom, I left the supposedly peaceful Shanghai 5 days after the gunfire began, heading forward along the winding Suzhou River. Along the way, there were cannons everywhere and enemy aircraft hovered overhead. Like the other 14 companions, I pressed forward regardless, not thinking about the stench of the dung boat we were on or the hunger in our bellies. But, Mom, you must understand that we are not fleeing. All 14 of us are warriors of salvation. It has been over 4 months since we set out, over 100 days of travel. How much territory has been lost? How many compatriots have been slaughtered? But we are not pessimistic. Perhaps the land we have lost will be turned to scorched earth. But when victory finally comes to us, we can recover the lost land and rebuild everything anew. I understand my own responsibility, understand the urgency of the Chinese nation's struggle for freedom and independence. I am a musician, willing to shoulder the great tasks of music in the war, hoping to shake the oppressed nation with resounding songs, comfort the wounded brave soldiers, and unite all the suffering people. This letter, written by Chinese composer Xian Xinghai on December 31st, 1937, is a document of the kind of nationalism that led to the defeat of colonial rule of over 80% of the world's land in 1914. Of course, China was only ever partially colonized, but in the historical moment of Xian's letter, Chinese nationalism, specifically Chinese musical nationalism, was regarded as instrumental in countering Japanese imperialism. In our contemporary moment, with fascist nationalism spreading not just in the global north, but also manifested in Xi Jinping's mass incarceration of Uyghurs, it is more important than ever to differentiate between different contexts of nationalism. While the following varieties of nationalism are related, they are not identical. 1. State-driven party nationalism. Statements of party nationalism are coerced out of lecturers in China who want to keep their jobs instead of becoming unemployed. Party nationalism identifies nationalism led by the party as a key instrument for mobilizing popular support to the promotion of Chinese culture and power. 2. State-driven civic nationalism. Lecturers in China may be forced to toe the party line in their published statements, but the vast majority of anthropologists subscribe to the older model of the multi-ethnic Chinese nation of 56 ethnicities rather than the new fusionist theory of nation promoted by Xi's regime. 3. State-driven ethno-nationalism. Because both nation and ethnicity translate to 民族 in Chinese, 民族 confusingly means both the 56 ethnicities and the Chinese nation-state. It is often the case that the unified meaning is applied in research grants worth up to $100,000 that aim to figure out what the Chinese musical school is. 4. Historical nationalism that was anti-colonial, as seen with Xian Xinghai. 5. Ethnic identity unrelated to nationalism. For example, a village musician who views his ethnic and cultural identity as Chinese, or Chinese pianists for that matter. The confusion stems from the translation of both ethnicity and nation to 民族 in Chinese. The sense of pride in Chinese ethnicity as expressed by particular musicians may not be related to mass incarceration of Uyghurs, party loyalty, or marginalization of minorities. Pride in Chinese ethnicity may feed into precisely those other forms, harmful forms of party nationalism and ethno-nationalism, because popular sentiments are circulated and amplified for nefarious means by others beyond one's control. Nevertheless, there is a distinction to be made between the different nationalisms, or mistaken cases of nationalism, as I will talk about shortly. I conclude with an observation that there is a real failure to properly engage Chinese graduate students both in China and in the global north on the issue of nationalism based on a conference I attended a few months earlier. Many students were unprepared to discuss nationalism. Even those who were already defending their dissertations on musical nationalism reproduced naive statements about nationalism instead of distancing themselves critically from the nationalism of their research subjects. On the other hand, naive statements of anti-nationalism regard anything that is not explicitly anti-nationalist, such as ethnic identity, as nationalist by default. This is led by the logic of synecdochical fallacy that takes the part that is ethno-nationalism for the whole, that is all expression of Chinese ethnic identity. That kind of thinking is not appropriate for oppressed communities in China, such as queers and human rights activists. Furthermore, there is a problem with the most common means of anti-nationalism via anti-essentialist theories such as inter-Asia or hybridity. Such theories do not always apply. For example, in the period before the 4th century CE, when East Asia is regarded as having emerged as an entity due to a critical mass of trade and exchange. The Second Sino-Japanese War is a case study that can launch the necessary conversation on nationalism. Thank you.